And this is the former Cobb building. This is new ways of looking. This is where 9 one-person shows are all put together. This, if you like, is the core of what we presented, because these are new emerging photographers. Some of them are actually quite old, and we actually have one dead emerging photographer, which is in itself slightly strange. And some of them are very young, from the age of 24, 25, right the way up to 60. But the one thing is none of these people have actually shown in Britain before, or indeed most of them haven't shown in a big exhibition anywhere, let alone in the UK. This is Susan Upton, and she photographs returning GIs from both Afghanistan and Iraq. She does 2 series, this one here with the blankets, and then these heads. You can see here the installation shots of her pictures, and here are the heads. These are shot on 5.4, and they're quite remarkable pictures because the way they're lying down. So for me it's very exciting because we're thinking about new ways of making portraits. So this is another thing that came up as a theme as well. Not only the arranged, arranged documentary photographs, if you like, or staged, but also this way of thinking about portraiture in a different way. This is Oscar Fernandez Gomez, who's a taxi driver in Monterrey, a big city in Mexico. And over the years, he's photographed all these different views from his car window. He was originally a wedding photographer and then decided to buy a taxi in order to supplement his income. And his wife was pregnant, and he decided what he would do is to photograph the scenes from his taxi in order to give his daughter an encyclopedia of the images that he found. But in fact, he lost his daughter, but he still continued with this project. And this is like a grid of the 36 pictures that we showed up at London Road. Here's, we're going to see one of his pictures later. This is Omar Lee. He was a village photographer in Senegal. So he's an emerging photographer at the age of 64. So in the 60s, he went around villages in Senegal, taking portraits of people, and then returning in about, say, 2 weeks later to give people their portraits. This is Dhruv Malhotra. He is a young Indian photographer, and he does this project called Sleepers. This is where he photographs at night, again, that theme coming up. But within these photographs, there's always someone asleep. Sometimes they're quite obvious, and sometimes they're quite subtle. So it's a bit like Where's Wally? You have to find the people who are asleep within the images. This is Billy Monk. I'll talk about Billy Monk in a minute. And this is Vivienne Sasson, another new portraitist and another photographer who somewhat stages pictures. She's a young, well, not so young, maybe 38, 36, Dutch photographer. She also did fashion, in fact. And ironically, very rarely do you actually find someone from the fashion world who goes to the art world with the same kind of success that Sasson has managed to achieve. And again, they're set up, occasionally pose. Within her book, she did this fantastic book of Flamboya. She also intercepts this with pictures of road, plants, such like. So she produces this wonderful narrative. She was actually born in Africa, in Kenya, and her father was a GP. And this always, if you like, was the impetus for her to go back and take portraits in rural and predominantly, I think, Kenya and Uganda. Wout Berger, another Dutch photographer. Here's Omar Lee now. So obviously he's at the village, he's got this backdrop which he takes with him, and here we have this guy who's really chuffed to have his record collection photographed in front of the camera. This is a Sasson picture from Flamboya. And this is one of the Upton images. Here's Dhruv. Here's a sleeper you can find pretty easily. It's probably the most obvious, the nearest sleeper in his set. Some of them are really hidden away. And this is Oscar and his taxi. The way he frames the pictures is quite fantastic. So he takes the most small detail of sort of day-to-day Mexican life. And by framing them like this, he makes them much more monumental. And it's a very clever device. When you see them all together, it's really quite convincing. This is a Wout Berger. Many of his landscapes, by the way, have sort of some kind of poison to them. So in a sense, there's a story behind the landscapes. So they're not just landscapes, they're poison landscapes. But of course, they still look very beautiful. This is Mohamed Bourissa. He's an Algerian who now lives in Paris, and this is a staged photograph. So he knows the Algerian youth scene in Paris very well, and he would get his friends there to reenact things, and he would direct it in a sort of Crewdson-like way, but much more spontaneously. So they're all staged documentary photographs, again, shot with 5.4, the quality is fantastic, and all staged by himself. This is Yu Duki, who is, if you like, a wild card, because she's as undocumentary as you can possibly get. And she creates two sets of pictures, one with cabbage leaves, and the other with vegetables. And here she recreates famous iconic paintings, or indeed these sort of beautiful women with cabbage leaves. She's Chinese, of course. And I love this idea, because one of the things we know about China is it's the land of the fake. So here she's actually making fake painting, but she's doing it with Chinese cabbage leaves and vegetables. So I thought that was a great pun. This is Billy Monk. Billy Monk is actually dead. He died way back in the 60s, in fact, because he was a bouncer at the Catacombs Club in Cape Town. And to supplement his living, he took photographs of his clientele, or the people coming to the club. He would sell them back to them. And someone spotted these pictures and thought they were rather good and gave him an exhibition in Johannesburg. And he wasn't able to attend the opening because he was diving for pearls. Great excuse not to go to your own opening. So 2 weeks later, after the show opened, he decided that he would go to Johannesburg. He went to the centre of Cape Town, trying to get a lift. He ended up in a street fight and actually basically got murdered. So he's on the way to his exhibition opening and was murdered. So he never made it. And his work has lain dormant for the last 25 years or so until it was first shown here at Brighton. So I thought it was a wonderful story, and you'll see the pictures, they're very interesting. And this is the House of Vernacular. I'm a great fan of vernacular photography. You all know what this is. It's basically snapshots, postcards, photographs not taken as art, but often actually having a purpose to record something, to show something, to sell to somebody. And this is something I'm very fond of. It has an innocence and a directness, which I think is very compelling, because sometimes when you see too much student work, you think, why are they doing this? They're doing this sometimes because they want to be photographers. All the people in this show are doing it because they have a job to deliver. And that sort of directness and motivation is something that's quite inspiring. So together with Fabrica, we decided to create this installation of the vernacular photographs, 7 sets that I've isolated we wanted to show. This is the frontage of the exhibition, the House of Vernacular. And you then go on this guided tour, some of you may have been there today, through the whole exhibition. You start with your Brazilian living room. Through the curtain. Whoops. Into an American living room where you see a set of slides called Corinthians. These are pictures all done with Kodachrome that are being selected by the archive from Modern Conflict, and you have a carousel going around with these 80 remarkable Kodachrome images. And then you come out into the courtyard, and here we have a series of photographs of litter bins, which I found in the design archive here in the University of Brighton. And I was looking through the archive just to see if there's anything there that sort of grabbed my attention. And on the way down to the archive, they had this photograph of the litter bin, and I asked the person there, she said, oh yes, we've got a lot of litter bins. So I looked at these litter bins and I thought, these are fantastic. So we created a courtyard within Fabrica to actually show the litter bin photographs. And this is Darchinger. He was a German photographer who photographed, if you like, the rebuilding of West Germany after the Second World War, where he tried to show what a modern utopian society it was. So these pictures are, if you like, slightly propaganda-ish, but they show sort of modern Germany at its very best. In order to present these, we had a pool of water, and the pictures literally come out of the pool and rotate around like this, with some jazzy German music from the 60s as well, just to sort of make sure the message got clearly home. And then you step into the aeroplane, and in this aeroplane we have a series of photographs of the interiors of African dictators' airplanes. These are planes that were done up by African dictators, particularly in the 60s and 70s, where like money was no object. They were very proud of their planes that they'd done, you know, spent copious amounts of money in these very poor countries, and of course would commission photographers to document this. And one of these photographers was someone called Nick Leese, And he was doing this as a work, as a job, if you like, and we showed this collection of photographs in an aeroplane type fuselage. Then through into the Tosan studio. This is a studio in Amsterdam that closed down about 4 years ago. And someone I know called William van Zietbel, who's a very good curator, gallerist, had inherited this collection. And this is a series from Tosan, a Chinese photographer working in Amsterdam in the community for about 25 years. And this is just a series of babies. Coming back to the Brazilian living room, this is a series that, that I discovered last year or 2 years ago in São Paulo, and a German collector who was living near Fortaleza in the northeast of Brazil had collected about 500 to 1,000 of these hand-painted oil paintings. This is, if you go into a Brazilian living room in the northeast of Brazil, this is what you see on the wall. They're hand-painted. So they take a black and white photograph, and with oil paints, they paint on top of the image to produce these remarkable images. And I've just published a book with Nazarene Press of these images, in fact. Here's a Kodachrome slide from the Corinthians. And here's a little bit. The end apartheid little bit. And a Darchinger. Airplane. And Tosan studio. And finally, in the House of Vernacular, we have a series of photographs of, these are images taken on the street to try and sell to people as they walk by. These are from Bogota in Colombia, and it's just a series of men with hats. We had other pictures, but we decided just to concentrate on men with hats. We didn't have the women or men with no hats, we just had men with hats. Just like this idea of Colombian men with hats. This is a collection brought together by the Archives of Modern Conflict in London, and they have many wonderful collections. I could have done the whole show just based on ANC, but I decided to pick out these 3 or 4 collections. And that, I think, is it. How are we doing for time? So we've got, perfect, 37 past, Helen. So now we've got our little discussion. Okay, thank you very much. Helen is going to ask me a few questions, and we're going to continue the dialogue.